Now, it's safe to say that the Houston Rockets offseason so far has already been a disaster. Even though the offseason technically hasn't started yet, recently Russell Westbrook requested a trade from the Houston Rockets just more than a year after he was traded there from Oklahoma City. And today, with many reports already coming out about the Houston Rockets organization and many toxic occurrences and a lot of turmoil going on in the locker room, I wanted to make a video explaining why I think it's time for Houston to blow it up and start a rebuild, and that's what I'm going to explain in today's video. But before we do get started, if you guys enjoyed today's video, please like the video as it really helps out the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new and you're a fan of the NFL or the NBA. I'm trying to reach 100 subscribers, and the support recently has been amazing. We're very close to that goal, and it'd be greatly appreciated if we could really reach that goal. A large percentage of you guys watching these videos are not subscribed. So if you guys are a fan of the NFL or the NBA, please and you guys watch this content consistently, please click the subscribe button. I'll also be doing a Q&A when we reach 100 subscribers. So if you guys want to learn more about me and you're a fan of the NFL or the NBA and you like the videos on this channel, please subscribe, as it would really mean a lot to me. With all of that being said, let's just get this thing started. We're going to start off today's video by taking a look at this Houston Rockets roster. And of course, we got to start out with James Harden, who I don't have to spend much time with, as he averaged 34 points per game this past season, along with 7.5 assists per game and 7 rebounds per game, and he shot 44% from the field and 35.5% from 3. With James Harden, we really don't have to spend much time on. He's one of the best scorers of all time. He can score, shoot, pass, and he's also a good playmaker. Well, passing and playmaking are pretty similar, but you guys know what I mean. But anyways, James Harden is a terrific offensive player and is arguably a top 5 player in the NBA, and is no doubt a top 10 player in the NBA also. James Harden is a terrific player, and while he hasn't been able to win a championship yet, let's all hope he does. Next up, we also got to talk about Russell Westbrook, who's a very good offensive guard who is great at attacking the rim, and he's good at everything offensively, well, except for shooting. But anyways, as he can score, pass, playmake, and rebound, as he averaged 27 points per game, 7 assists per game, and 8 rebounds per game, shooting 47% from the field. Next up, we also got to talk about Robert Covington, who did arrive from the Minnesota Timberwolves in a trade, and he's a very good 3-and-D wing. Well, his 3-point percentage with the Houston Rockets so far this season, well, this past season, may not suggest that he's still a very good 3-and-D wing. He averaged 12 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 2 blocks per game. And he was a very important piece to this team, as he really helped their small ball work. Next up, we also got to talk about PJ Tucker, who's one of my favorite players on this Houston Rockets team, aside from a lot of other guys. But he's one of my favorite players, as he's a good 3-and-D player, and he's a great veteran leader. And while his stats of 7 points and 7 rebounds per game, along with shooting 36% from 3, really don't make him look like an amazing player, he's a very valuable player to this team with his veteran leadership, his defense, and his 3-point shooting. Overall, I think he's a great player. Next up, we got to talk about Eric Gordon, who did struggle with injuries this year. However, we all know how good of a player he can be when he's healthy, as he's a great 3-point shooter, and he's also a solid defender, as this past season he did just average 14 points per game, and he did this on bad efficiency. And the final player I really want to talk about is Daniel House, who's a nice 3-and-D wing, and he averaged 10.5 points per game and shot 36% from the field. He's a solid player, but also he can be pretty stupid. But yeah, anyways, that is a pretty nice roster. But with all the drama going on, it doesn't really look like this team is really going to be staying together for much longer. Not only that, but Russ and Harden are getting old. So if you ask me, as much as I hate to say it, I don't think this team is going to be winning a championship. I really do hate to say it. I like James Harden and Russell Westbrook. Don't get me wrong, they're two of my favorite players to watch in the NBA, and the Rockets were a very fun team to watch, and I like them. The Denver Nuggets are my favorite team, but the Rockets were a fun team to watch. But moving on, the hard truth is, they just cannot win a championship, as the title, well, not as the title says, but they just can't win a championship. It's time to blow things up in Houston. Russell Westbrook is probably going to be the first guy out. Now, as for where he could go, and he could go to some team like the Clippers, or he did also put out a list of teams he'd like to go to, which is the Bucks, Hawks, Lakers, or the Clippers. Now, really the only realistic option in that list is the Clippers, and I definitely think that could happen. Now, maybe they could get like a ton of role players for him, or I've also seen rumors of like a Paul George and Russell Westbrook swap. And if you ask me, if they want to still contend, then maybe a Russell Westbrook for Paul George swap would definitely not be that bad. And while I know Paul George had a bad playoff run and he's been clowned on a lot, we can't forget how good of a player he is, because the guy normally is a good player, and if he can just like fix the playoff issues, I think he'd get his respect back. Now, as for some other options besides the Clippers, the Magic, Knicks, or the Hornets might also get him, as the Hornets have also expressed interest, and some possible trades could be something like the Rockets getting Julius Randle, Bobby Portis, Elfrid Payton, 2023 first, with the Knicks getting Russell Westbrook. And if you ask me, it's not a bad trade. Well, okay, it's not the worst trade for the Rockets, as they do get some nice, young, I guess somewhat young pieces along with the 2023 first, and the Knicks also get Russell Westbrook. For this, another trade I came up with the Rockets would get Patrick Beverley, Montrezl Harrell in a $15 million sign-in trade, and JaMychal Green, with the Clippers getting Russell Westbrook. Now, I could see the Clippers maybe just doing a Russell Westbrook for Paul George swap, as I said before, but if you ask me, I mean, this is not that bad of a trade either, as the Rockets would get very deep, and the Clippers, while they'd lose some depth and some important guys, I do think Russell Westbrook would be good as a source of playmaking, and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George can both play off ball. However, if you ask me, if I'm the Clippers, I don't know if getting Russell Westbrook is the best idea, as they already have some locker room issues going on, and I don't know if he'd necessarily help them. And for another trade I thought of, it was the Rockets would get Nikola Vucevic, Evan Fournier, and Orlando would get, and the Houston would also get 2023 first. I can't forget that. But the Magic would also get Russell Westbrook. And if you ask me, I would say this is an okay trade for the Rockets. They would get Nikola Vucevic, who is a good offensive center, and Evan Fournier is also not that bad of an offensive guard, along with the first round pick, and the Magic would get Russell Westbrook, who would definitely make them a better team, as he would probably make them like a mid-level, like a very mid Eastern Conference team. But moving on from Westbrook, we also got to talk about James Harden. And James Harden, he's an amazing player, don't get me wrong. And he has expressed his loyalty to Houston, and he has stated that he wants to stay there. But if you ask me, I think Houston should trade him. Now, he did say that if he is traded, he'd like to go to either one of these three teams, which is Brooklyn, Miami, or Philadelphia. And to me, the most realistic options are probably like Philadelphia number 1, maybe Brooklyn is maybe number 2, and then Miami. But as for some James Harden trades, one I did think of is the Rockets would get Ben Simmons, Mike Scott, Malik Monk, a 2023 Charlotte first, a 2020 Oklahoma City first via Philadelphia, a 2021 Philadelphia first, and a 2023 Philadelphia first, along with a 2025 Philadelphia first. And the 76ers would get James Harden, and the Hornets would get Russell Westbrook. Yeah, that's a lot of firsts, but I would, if you ask me, James Harden is going to be worth a lot. So maybe you do subtract like 1 or 2 like Philadelphia first, but James Harden is definitely going to cost a lot. However, he'd be great. James Harden would be really good for the 76ers team, as he would provide some floor spacing, and he's also a good ball handler, so he can handle the ball, and he's also a good playmaker. And Joel Embiid would finally get improved spacing, and ever since like the 17 to 18 season, and then like sort of the 18 to 19 season. But moving on, let's also talk about the Westbrook to the Hornets. I mean, if you ask me, I don't think Charlotte should do that. I think they should try and build mostly through the draft, and maybe if they are going to trade for someone, I don't think it should be Russell Westbrook, as the guy is starting to get a little bit old, and I think that's just going to make Charlotte a really mid team, and they should focus mostly on building through the draft. And as for another trade I thought with James Harden, it would be the Rockets would get Spencer Dinwiddie, Jarrett Allen, Caris LeVert, Taurean Prince, a 2020 Philadelphia first, and 3 more Brooklyn first. Now, maybe you do subtract like Taurean Prince, I guess, like if the money does work like that, if you can make the money work, and maybe you do subtract the 2020 Philadelphia first, but it's going to take a lot to get James Harden, as I said before. However, it's not a bad trade for either side. The Nets would definitely get their 3rd star. They'd get a 2nd superstar. Well, if you consider Kyrie Irving a superstar, but you guys know what I mean. They get more than a 3rd star. They would get a 3rd. They could, James Harden could maybe be the 1st. Well, probably the 2nd. But anyways, the Nets would probably become the favorites to win it all. The Rockets would get Jarrett Allen and Caris LeVert, who are nice young pieces, and Taurean Prince. I mean, if he's included in the trade, then maybe you could consider him a nice young piece. and they'd also get some draft picks in this. Even if you do subtract out the Philadelphia first, this would still not be that bad of a trade for either side. But I do think something like 3 to 5 first round picks is something he's worth. Well, maybe 3 to 4. I don't think you should bet your entire future on James Harden, as the guy is starting to get a little bit old. But you're definitely going to have to give up a lot. But as for another trade I thought of, would be James Harden to Miami, and the Rockets would get Tyler Hero, Andre Iguodala, Kendrick Nunn, Kelly Olynyk, along with 3 Miami firsts, and the Heat would get James Harden. Now, if you ask me, I don't really see this happening, because while James Harden would probably like to go to Miami, I don't think the Heat are going to be trading for James Harden, as they have expressed that they'd like to try and lure Giannis to Miami in 2021 for free agency. Plus, Tyler Hero was very good for the Miami Heat, and I don't think Miami should trade Tyler Hero. If you ask me, they should try and be good now, but also at the same time kind of build for the future, as they have nice pieces like Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and Kendrick Nunn. But that's really all for the trades. But really, Houston has to blow things up. The Rockets are not going to be winning a title with this core. I hate to say it, but I don't think they can compete with the Lakers. And while Mike D'Antoni, I do think, should take some blame for that series. For that series going, being that short, I don't think they would beat the Lakers. And if you ask me, I don't think this team can win a championship. I really do hate to say it. But if you ask me, I think it's time for Houston to blow it up. With all the locker room drama, and the fact that Harden and Russ are aging, and the fact that this roster is really hard to... It's kind of hard to improve with this roster, and I don't think they can really win a championship with this core. I think it's time to blow things up. But with all of that being said, though, you guys, that's going to be the end of today's video. If you guys liked today's video, please click the like button, as it really helps out the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new and you're a fan of the NFL or the NBA, as I'm trying to reach 100 subscribers. Again, the support lately has been very good. We're really close to that goal. I'm also going to be doing a Q&A when we reach 100 subscribers. So if you guys want to learn more about me and you're a fan of the NFL or the NBA and you haven't subscribed yet, please click the subscribe button. But with all that being said, though, you guys, well, I'm out.